With me today is Taylor Fulks. She is the author of A Prisoner Without Bars, The Journey of a Damaged Woman to Someplace Normal. I really love this part. This is her debut novel, and it has a subject matter that she was told by industry editors that nobody wanted to talk about. This is exactly why we're here today. We do want to talk about it. So with that, Taylor, I like to start with people often don't understand why we want to tell our stories, even though they get to tell their stories, and every fishing trip they went on, every Christmas that was happy, they don't like to hear the stories of tragedy. So I want to hear the motivation why you wrote this novel. And it is a novel, but it was a fantastically written novel. I thought it was triumphant, and I thought it was mesmerizing. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but tell me why you wrote this book and why you're here with us today.
Well, I wrote the book. In truth, I was experiencing empty nest syndrome. Both my daughters were in college, high school, rarely here. My husband does his own thing. I kind of do my own thing. And I was looking around the house one day and I thought, oh my God, this is my life alone. And so I actually started to write because I'm a avid reader and audiobook listener. I actually started trying my hand at just writing maybe a romantic mystery. And I actually got a quarter of the way through, and the Jerry Sandusky situation at Penn State happened. And I was completely overtaken by it. I was obsessed because for once they were actually taking the side of the children, and they were punishing a person who was harming young children. And I thought, oh, how cool this is and how wonderful this is. I watched everything I could get my hands on. That I could listen to. I read everything that I could get, in front of me, just to find out what was going on and to follow the story. And the turning point for me was, I can't remember if it was a Dateline or a 60 Minutes, but anyway, they had a bunch of students, administrators that they were interviewing. And this man actually stood there and had the audacity to say that because of what they were doing to Joe Paterno, and the ramifications of the college, I think they had taken away some NCAA awards or something like that. But anyway, that he couldn't understand how they could do that, that the punishment was far worse than the crime.
Oh,
And
I remember well.
At that moment, I lost my mind. I mean, I was just like, people don't know. People don't understand. They don't know. I mean, you can empathize, you can sympathize, but until you are in that situation, in the darkest place in the world, innocent, and no one there to help you, you can't know. And so I went, deleted, and I started writing My Prison Without Bars. I started it more or less like a book report, and I had 4 friends that I work with that were reading my manuscript, handwritten, and they would look at me and go, yeah, it's okay, it's all right. No. And suddenly I just realized I have to be brave enough and honest enough to tell the story. And so I didn't want the trials and tribulations of all these people who have written authentic autobiographies and then turned around and someone say, well, that's not true because she wasn't there then, or this didn't happen then, or these dates don't work out, or whatever. So I thought, I'll just write a novel about my life.
Right.
And
I thought it was brilliant, a brilliant idea.
Thank you.
I did not. I wrote a memoir because a murder happened and they deserve accountability, but it's a very different thing. Keep going.
But I really felt that and it was my goal through the whole 13 months that it took me to write it, that I had to be brutally honest, and my goal was to make people feel, even for the short amount of time that it takes to read the book, I wanted people to feel what it was like to be a child that no one wanted, that was an escape for a narcissistic mother, that, you know, basically had no one to protect, no one to, you know, keep the monsters away, what that's like for a child, and, you know, what it does to you the rest of your life. And so,
Right. No, and you did a
that was
wonderful.
basically my motivation.
Yep. And you did a wonderful job explaining that and exploring that. So with that, if you can just tell us in as much detail as you want, just kind of bring us into your story so that the person listening understands what we're talking about.
Basically, my very first memory was being touched in an inappropriate way in the back of a car. My stepfather was being, I don't know what you call it, shipped off, deployed to Vietnam. And so that was my first memory.
And you're how old at this point?
And I was 3. And
You were
what's comical
3.
is people think that you don't remember,
Oh, you remember.
you know, at that early age. And the thing is no, I don't remember an ice cream cone I got. No, I don't remember a new pair of shoes that I got, or, you know, anything good, but you do remember the bad. And I was 3 years old. I even checked it with my mother. So, but anyway, that was my first memory. And he was sent to Vietnam. He came back. I won't say that he was any different. I would say that he was just more determined.
And how long was he gone?
Oh gosh, really couldn't tell
Several
you.
years, because when you come
Probably a
back, you're
couple of
you're
years.
older now, right?
Yeah, probably a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay.
But when he came back, he was very determined, and it was ritualistic. It was several nights a week. My mother was trying to go to school. We lived in a little trailer, last trailer, last lot, last road in the trailer court. I was not allowed to play with other kids. I was not allowed to talk to neighbors. I was not allowed to get out of the yard. I was not allowed, you know, basically to have any type of encounter with humanity.
Right.
And
Complete control.
complete control.
Complete control.
So I had no idea that what he was doing to me was not normal. I mean, I basically thought, hey, all dads do this to their little girls. And so when I started school, and I attribute that, my best friend Carmen, I will never forget her as long as I live. Couldn't tell you her last name, but my best friend Carmen, I actually asked her, I said, does your dad do this to you? No, ooh, that's gross. Oh yeah, I know. Does your dad do this to you? And every single thing I asked her, she would tell me, you know, no, ooh, that's gross. And it was her and that encounter that made me feel guilt and shame.
And probably thickened the silence, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
right.
And also it gave me a sense of being dirty. And so at that point, I went back and I confronted him and said that I was going to tell my mother. And that enraged him. My mother was going to Alpena Community College, we lived in Oscoda, so my mother had to drive. She got snowed in. There was a terrible storm. And so he packed me up, took me in his truck, and had a sleeping bag and his winter boots, and put them on me and took me out in the middle of a field and left me there. I don't know if you've ever experienced winters in Michigan or the night sky in Michigan, or being out in the country and looking up and there's nothing but blackness.
Mhm.
And that's the dark hole that I describe to anyone that wants to know. It's a black hole. There's no out. There's no way. There's no way to get out. It's just blackness. And it's the coldest I've ever been in my life. And when he finally came and got me, couldn't tell you what time, but it felt like hours later. When he finally came and got me, he took me home, and before he took me in, he did some things to me and then told me that if I ever told anybody, that he would take me away from my mother forever. And so the silence began, and it remained. I finally, at the age of 8, he thought that I was old enough that the fondling could stop and that he could proceed with other things. I was raped repeatedly, night after night after night. My mother was studying, and he would come in my room, and then I started bleeding. He thought that I had started my period. It was merely damage from what he was doing to me. And so then he decided that sodomy was a better way of dealing with the potential of pregnancy. And again, I'll reiterate, I was 8 years old.
Right.
And that continued till I was 9. And I couldn't do it anymore. And I asked God to either kill him or kill me. And neither of those things happened. And so one night I snapped. I couldn't do it anymore. And I got him off of me, and I ran to my mother and I told her what he was doing. She locked me in her bedroom. They went out, had a horrific fight. He left that night, and she came in, didn't speak to me, didn't comfort me, nothing. She just basically told me to go to sleep, roll over and go to sleep. And then the next morning, she asked me if I was telling the truth. And I said, I told her, yes,
Classic.
I'm telling you the truth. And she slapped me. I mean, to the point my ears rung. And then proceeded to inform me that I had ruined her life, that he was the love of her life, and that I had destroyed any happiness that she could possibly have.
I'm so sorry. And just, it helps us to know that other people have lived through this. After I witnessed a murder of my mother, after my dad went in the hospital because he put himself in a coma by doing this because he was a diabetic, she came into my room after she returned from the hospital and slapped me as well. She wanted to know who this woman was and what was going on, or something like that. I can't exactly remember what she was asking me, but that was the comfort I received. And so I'm terribly sorry that you went through that. But your abuse didn't stop there. Even though you told her and she knew, the abuse didn't stop. So go ahead and continue on. I just wanted to comfort you in a minute because I understand.
I appreciate that. She, so anyway, they divorced. We moved to Wichita Falls. And he moved. I'm lying to you. I'm sorry. I'm lying to you. We were living in Wichita Falls. She then moved us to Fort Worth. She was going to school at Texas Christian University. We lived in just off campus. I mean, it was worse than any frat house you've ever seen that's, just trashed. I was so ashamed that I would actually walk 3 blocks away, which it was a much nicer neighborhood, and get on a bus so that no one could see the house that I lived in. But anyway, he rented a house probably 3 or 4 houses down from us. And he started coming to the house, and he informed me that, well, actually, he drove up, and I was actually terrified. I was just literally shaking in my shoes. And he walks up to me and he said, "I have a surprise for you." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, I'm sorry. But anyway, he said, I have a surprise for you. He said, reach in my pocket. And I reached in his pocket and I pulled out a long thing of condoms. And he said, "I'm going to use these on you." Or he said, "I'm going to use these on your mom." And he said, "When I'm done with her," he said, "I'm going to come in and I'm going to use them on you."
And you're 8 or 9 at this time.
I'm 9 years old.
9 years old. Right.
And so I laid there in my bedroom, and, these old rental houses, the doors, there's a little bit of room below. And I would sit there and watch the light. I would lay there, couldn't go to sleep. I would lay there and watch the light and wait for his footsteps to come in front of the door. And sure enough, every single night he would come in and he would rape me. And this went on until I was 12 years old. And at that point, or actually prior to that, when I was 8 and my mom divorced, she informed me that I actually had a biological father. And so we had made contact with him. He was not interested. He played at it for a while. But anyway, so when I had some contact with him and my paternal grandparents, and I had told them what was going on, they contacted Child Protective Services. And I was at school one day and had a counselor come and talk to me, and that's how I ended up in foster care.
Right. And so, honestly, I thought that was such a gift that your biological father gave to you, really. I mean, didn't that stop that? I mean, I know that it wasn't comfortable to be removed and all that. Did Gene come, or, you call him Gene in the book. Did this pedophile come back into your life after that when you were removed for those couple of months, or did that end it?
No, that ended it, I think, but not because he was afraid. I think it was because my mother was afraid.
Well, thank God. Who cares, right? Thank God.
And she
That was
really had
enough.
to. I mean, I was in the foster home for well over 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And so, she had to prove that she was done with that. Or I'm assuming she did, because eventually she, got me back. And I hate to give away, because some of these things are in the book.
Right.
Why she got me back or how she got me back. But
right. And definitely they should read the whole story. It is a fascinating
bad
book.
things happened to me while I was in the foster care.
Yes, which I mean, it happens so often. I've met so many people that while they're in foster care, it's no safe place, and
Well,
we're trying.
and the thing is that it's not, it's not how financially stable people are. There are people that are
Right.
very well off that take on foster children.
Right.
And I was just a live-in maid, basically. But yeah, it is. I feel for children that have no one. And
Right. Well, you know, and honestly, that was a huge gift that your father, your
yeah,
natural father gave to you. It was a huge gift. I want to thank you so much, and I'm so sorry for that experience. I mean, it just you go in much more detail in the book, but I wanted to read about this to move us into our next question. She's
okay.
such a great writer. Um, she says, at this stage of my life, I had become accustomed to living with the filth and shame of my past. It coated my body like a second skin. I was accustomed to feeling as though the blood that coursed through my veins was contaminated and infected by something so dirty that not only was I infected, but anyone who touched me would also become infected. I had been sentenced to life with something so vile inside of me, I could never be free. It could not be washed off. I would never be clean. I wanted to move into the next question about what it left in your life. So now at 12 years old, which fucking 12 years old. I mean, I just 12 years old, the abuse stops, but it doesn't all of the aftermath. What did that look like in your life then, you know, to anger and dissociation? And tell me a little bit about what that looked like then to carry on in life with such an abundance of trauma from the time you're 3 until you're 12.
Well, first of all, you're alone. I mean, you
Mhm.
can't talk. You can't tell anybody. I mean, I told the one person that I trusted more than anybody in this world, and she didn't believe me. So you shut down. I didn't have close friends. I didn't have. I mean, don't get me wrong. I had a few people that I was tight with, but you know,
You don't
I
trust
didn't.
them,
I didn't have
right?
the the what is it, the traveling pants, the close knit
Mhm.
friendships, they'll come
Bonded
to us,
friendships. Yeah.
bonded friendships.
Mhm.
I never experienced that, and to this day I have one um very close friend, a sister of my soul that I love, more
Mhm.
than any other non-family member in this world. um but to say that I was close with anybody, that I shared my life. It was funny when this book came out, and I got on Facebook purely to promote my book.
Okay. Share the story.
Well, but the thing is that I quickly learned that for me, Facebook was a reconnection with people from my past, from
Right.
school. And
Right.
I didn't want to. I feel there's other places that you can pimp your stuff. You know, there are some people that do it, and like the I don't know, the garage sale, Facebook garage sale, or Facebook backyard, or whatever. I really felt like that was a gift too, because I reconnected with friends that I had made in high school, and
And they probably had no idea.
none of them knew.
I
And
I have the same thing happen. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people actually messaged me and
Mhm.
said how, first of all, they didn't know. And then several told
Mhm.
me, oh my God, stuff like that was happening to me. I have
Mhm.
people that I work with that actually said, I can't tell you what it means for you to come forward and say this. And it gives me courage to tell you what happened to me. I mean, I had well over 500 messages from people who'd read my book that said, it told me their story.
It's
I,
beautiful. That's
I
beautiful.
spent I spent most of the first year after I published it answering those people,
Mhm.
because I firmly believe that out of, what do we have now, 8 billion people on the universe,
Mhm.
and or on this world, and you picked me, you picked my book to read, and you chose to get in contact with me, how can I not respond to you?
Right.
And what
And
was
when you
really,
think, right, and when you think about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men by the time they're 18 will have a sexual crime committed against them. And those are only 20% of people talk. So think
yeah,
about, Taylor, the real numbers, right?
yeah.
And so
And I
the
personally don't
advocacy
believe that.
work is huge.
I don't believe that those statistics are correct. I
No, they can't be. Well, if
don't
20%
think that.
talk, then they
Yeah,
can't be, because people, and this is the this is the walls that we want to bring down.
yeah,
You are victims of crimes. Now, while you and I and many of us do not stay victims, that it was a crime. And it's why I like to call them crimes.
yeah.
Incest is not a family matter. Incest is a crime, period. But they want to say it is. And so the other thing that I really picked up in your novel was the anger that played out in your life. Because isn't anger, emotions for me, I just opened this box, shoved them all in and said, I don't need you, I can't use you. I would have died. I would never have made it out of my life with my parents if I had emotions. I didn't feel happiness, I didn't feel sadness, I never cried, but I didn't really feel anything. But if I did feel, I could be angry. But even that, after all those years with my father, I didn't have much anger. And in 18-year marriage, I still didn't, but it started coming back. But I liked that it stayed with you. Talk to me a little bit about that. I think it helped you.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's my heritage or what. My father was Irish. My mother's Hispanic, and I think the combination of the two, I just had um, this. I can't even describe it. It's just it's kind of like when a pressure cooker and the little top starts shaking, but when things blow, it just goes to town and and I guess that's basically been my entire life.
Yes,
Has
right.
I've been very angry my whole life, and one of the things this book has done, I know I want to make this abundantly clear. This didn't heal me. Okay, you cannot heal,
No.
and I'm a medical professional. Okay,
Mm.
I know what healing is, and you cannot heal from rape and sodomy and neglect and
Betrayal.
emotional abuse, um,
Mm-hmm.
abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
You can't heal from those, but you can find peace and acceptance. You can find that, but you got to look damn hard to find it, and you got to decide that that's what you want to do. And I knew that, really and truly, I knew that I did not want to live in the poverty and the situation that I had been born into, that I wanted to better myself, to do something more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of just took that anger and just internalized it. And I wanted to make something of myself, and be something. And up until the time I was 38, I'm 61, by the way. By the time I turned 38, I had been beaten down. I had been overpowered. I had been talked down to. I had been, um, most of my interpersonal relationships had been very one sided, power, weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I won't say abuser, but I'll say, dominant, submissive,
Mm-hmm.
not in the sexual terms, but in the terms of, I stayed within myself. And when I turned 38, my oldest daughter was 8 years old. And that was when the first time that I was raped
Triggered.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is a trigger. What people
she
use the
looks,
word trigger for today is
yeah,
so not what a trigger is. A trigger is she turns
exactly.
8. I got raped at 8.
Well, and the
That's
thing
a
is,
trigger.
if you put our pictures as children together,
Yeah.
she looks very much like me. My youngest daughter looks like my husband. But
Oh,
when
I
I say
bet that
that,
spun you out.
oh my gosh, I had the most
Yes.
vivid dream, and I've never forgotten it. I was literally floating above her and
Yeah.
watching the scene of me the first time I was raped. And when she turned over, I saw her face, not mine.
Mm.
And something clicked inside me. And that's when the anger started coming out. Not so much in acting out, but in speaking out and speaking up.
Right.
And I really think that that helped me to find my voice. And
Well, yeah.
unfortunately,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, unfortunately, it took until I was 48. So it took almost 10
Hmm.
years to embrace my voice. Um,
Right.
and now I'm very outspoken,
It takes us year. It does. And, talking
it does.
about anger, I think that anger can be very negative in life and it can lead to bitterness, or anger can be used kind of like a festering wound helps you find the thing that's in there making it fester. And I
Right. And get
think
it
that,
out.
right, anger brings you back to a place where it should be there. It's a violation of your being. And I think
Oh, yeah.
people misinterpret that my counselor was really good at saying anger can't stand alone. Jody, tell me what's behind it, right? It can't stand alone, but it does indicate to us that a violation has occurred. So it's really positive. And I think that you always used it from what I could read, you used it in this way. And of course, we all get stuck someplace. None of us are perfect, but you used it in a way to say, there's something festering here and I've got to get this out, right? Because I think anger is a positive way to see there's a problem somewhere. I've been violated.
And two, and you know this from writing your book, that um, you you really have to have some form of passion, whether it's a love of writing, or
Mhm.
an anger about something that you think is wrong, or
Mhm.
just some internal passion that makes you do it. Because truly, I mean, it took me 13 months to write this, and that didn't include the editing and all that goes
Right.
into it,
Right.
because I there was so much self discovery in this, because I would write things down that I clearly remembered. I envy you being able to I don't want to say forget, but just block out certain things. I never did, and I don't know why. And sometimes I
Right.
ask God, why didn't you give me the grace of that? Why didn't you let me not remember, or why didn't you let me block? And I to this day I can't give you an answer. But um, the thing is that when I wrote it, in the process of editing, because I edited as I went along, I thought I cannot read
Mhm.
through this thing over and over again. I'm
Mhm.
just going to edit as I go along. And when there were certain points when like, for instance, when I came to the realization that my mother knew,
Right.
for so many, she left me with the impression that she didn't know.
Well, and they often do. I wanted to just stop for 1 second and go back to what you
Okay.
said about blocking. So,
Uh-huh.
one of the things that I think is so terrific why God didn't allow that blocking, as you just said, or, whatever the case may be, when you block, it's because you can't handle the trauma anymore. And so, what you did, I bet if you would have told and nothing would have happened, then that blocking would have started being part of what they call trauma amnesia, because you can't facilitate any more pain. And so being raped at 17 and 18, I couldn't take any more from my parents. I just couldn't. And trauma amnesia becomes this place where it's the only thing you've got to survive. But what you did again, though, which is so beautiful, Taylor, is at 12, there was this alarm that went off in you and you said, fuck this, I'm gonna go tell. And I think it's beautiful. And had you not had that father that stepped back in your life, I think that's a beautiful progression. For me, it didn't work that way. And amnesia is a way that just helps you stay involved, because you almost would will yourself to die, just like you said, I want to die. And so anyway, I think it's a beautiful thing, because actually it stopped for you when you told. And so thank God that it wasn't so long that you had to forget that you actually found. So I don't know. I just like to leave a positive where there's a positive.
Well,
So
I want to give you a positive back, because until this conversation, I had never looked at my birth father as giving me a
Mm.
gift. So
It's a tremendous gift.
you've given me perspective to look back at,
That's cool. That's very
because
cool.
he never had anything else to do with me, here and there, but
Right. It changed the entire trajectory of your life,
yeah,
Taylor.
but
Think about that.
you have given me something really. I mean, you've given me a gift
Oh, awesome.
of insight into that. So I thank you for that.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. That's so beautiful. So I like to talk about now, just moving into that, just because we have, I'd love to just would stay there, but I want to talk about how love gets commingled in the abuse. People so often don't understand that the tolerance somehow, or I can't, it's hard for me to find the words, even though I've lived it both. Not with my mother. I really just had a great disdain for my mother. She didn't like me and I didn't like her much, even though she was in those rooms with my father sometimes. But my father made me believe that we were in a love affair together. Did you and your abuser, did you have any of those kind of weird things coexisting, even though we know it's wrong and we know it's abusive? Did he try to commingle this love affair into it?
No, I mean, it was more of my, this is our little secret.
Right.
This is,
Right.
there is I wish I could show you my laptop screensaver, because I have a I don't know what to call it, an ad for my book, and it has my um, book cover on it, and then it has a little girl with daddy's hand right here, or
Mm.
actually it's left hand, because daddy's wedding ring is right here. And that that was more of a, this
Mhm.
is our special relationship. Mommy doesn't need to know this. This is just between you and me. um, Daddy loves you, and again, until I got to school, I thought this is what, you learn what you live.
Right. And so there he did send this message of that
Well,
love is here, which
yeah.
kind of moves me into, you do this fascinating journey in your book. And for anybody listening to me, you should read her book. It's fascinating. I think it's quite bright the way that she's brought it together, but she does this metaphorical scene where she's now grown and she's having a hard time in her marriage and this sort of thing. And metaphorically, she steps into a room where her abuser's son walks into the room and takes her captive, and he is not loved by the father, and she was. And so this is why, to me, I could see that weird commingling message where he says to you, dad loved you but rejected me. So there's these weird love and rejection messages in it, right? And so how can you talk a little bit about that? How, because in the room you really, he really comes to you about he loved you but he didn't love me and all of these things.
Well, that in fact is true. The part about having a son,
Mm-hmm.
did have a son. The son was always jealous of me. The He was in fact working around children, doing things that he should not be doing around children. I'm not saying to children, but around
Mm-hmm.
children. Um, and the way I got into this metaphor,
Right.
or
It's a gripping scene how you bring it together.
or ending was, I basically wanted to end the book kind of abruptly with, after my husband and I got together, basically saying, and she lived happily ever after. And the women that were reading my manuscript as we went, said, no, 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 no. You can't put us through all of this
Mhm.
and not get to where you are now.
Right.
Okay? You have to give where you are now. And for the life of me, I couldn't think about what's interesting about my life now. I mean, as far as reading about it and getting to this point, and my very best friend told me, she said, okay, what's the worst thing you'd want to happen to that son of a bitch? Those were her
Mm.
exact words. What's the worst thing? And I thought about it. And of course I thought, well, die. And then She said, okay. And she said, what is your greatest fear? Think of the thing that scares you the most. Well, at the time, we were doing travel ball with both our daughters. And my youngest daughter was on a ball team. We'd stay in a hotel. The kids would play hide and seek in the hotel. I was never comfortable with it. But of course, my husband's like, oh, the kids are playing. It's okay. And I thought to myself, what if some psycho opens his door, grabs a kid, pulls them in the hotel room? You have no idea. And so that was how the scenario came.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I took my revenge and I took my biggest
Yes.
fear and I melded them
Blended it.
together.
Right.
And
I thought
and
it was a brilliant way in the book that I've written, which also is A Prisoner by No Crime of My Own. And you mentioned a prison as well, because it really is a prison that we live in when
oh,
you
it
come
is.
through these things. I also do a chapter called Murder, a Flip Book, and I bring all of it. Well, it's not in a novel base, it's reality, but I bring
Yeah.
it together in the order that it was done, because what people don't understand is the reason why it's so difficult to heal from this is it doesn't play back like in the order that it should. A 3-year-old memory could come back. A 15-year-old memory could come back. You have no idea. You could be in a great situation, taking a hot bath, and a terrible memory comes back. So it's very difficult, right, for us to find some kind of order that we can lay it down, because there is, we can find this place of peace. Now, while we'll never probably live 100% without residual effects, I think that's a unlikely thing to hope for. We certainly can
Exactly.
get to a
Yeah.
place where, we can find peace, which that brings me to the next thing I want to talk to you about. You wrote, there's this line in your book, and I think I wrote it down, where you say, so the abuser comes in and you guys are in the truck, which is another, I thought, a secret place that he brought you to, right? Like they're so good at bringing you to these secret places. And now you're a small girl and you're driving this truck and it's all secret and you're alone. But then you say, I saw Satan in his eyes. Now, one of the things that I can tell you is I literally saw red in my father's eyes when he would rape me. And this is when I was a little girl, before we left that house. I turned 4 and then we moved from that house. So when I was 3, I can remember seeing fire in my father's eyes. I like to ask people, because there's often this God wound that's hurt, because these men are just straight from the pit of hell. It's going
Yeah.
to be my belief, and I don't care what anybody tells me. I lived it. I saw it. They're from hell. Where was God in this for you? Can you talk to me about that? Because I do think that the tragedy is there is this big God wound left in us. So could you talk to me about that? Because you were raised Baptist. My father went to a Baptist church, Bible study in the front, rape in the back. So where was God for you in this?
Missing when I was a child,
Right.
in my mind. He got me through every moment of it, but I didn't know it because I prayed, um, the now I lay me down to sleep. And then I followed with, a rendition of, please God, don't let him come home from Vietnam. Please God, don't let him come in my room. Please God, don't let him hurt me. Please God, make him go away. I can remember rolling in the sheets and rolling myself like a crescent roll, trying to roll away from him. And he'd roll me back. And I would say, please, God, not tonight, not tonight. And my prayers were not answered, in the sense that that did not happen. And so there was a time in the book where I actually wrote, I stopped praying to a God that I didn't believe listened to me. I now know with every fiber of my being that he is the only reason that I survived. But not only that, he is the reason that I thrived. And he is the reason I have a voice. He is the reason that I spoke out about this atrocity. Um, you know, with all the things that are going on in the world, and I won't go either way on that. But the one thing that I can tell you is that pedophilia, incest, anything to do with children. I'm damaged for life. Okay.
Mhm.
You break a cup, you glue it back together. You know, if you do it right, the cup still holds water, or the cup still holds coffee. The cup is still usable, but you're still going to see those cracks. You're still going to see where you fixed it. I can hammer a nail into a
Right.
piece of wood. I've damaged it, but I can put some caulking in there or some wood filler and take care of it. The damage is always there. And the thing is what I've learned is I'm not ashamed to say that.
Right.
I got a tattoo not too long ago, actually last year, when it was the 10-year anniversary of my book being published.
Oh, has
And
it been out 10 years?
it has been out
Oh,
for 10 years.
congratulations. That's awesome.
And the tattoo is, look at me, don't confuse broken for weakness.
Oh, I love it. That's
You know,
beautiful.
I'm broken. I'm damaged goods. I will never be what I could have been had this not happened.
Mhm.
But I contribute to society. I contribute to, I take care of sick people.
Right.
Um, you
In a
know,
badass way, by the way.
you I heal broken hearts.
Oh,
One of the
that's a beautiful she tell us what you do real quick, because that is kind of a
Well,
cool metaphor
I
too.
tell my patients happy birthday, and they're like, it's not my birthday. And I said, oh yes it is, because when we get done with you, you've got, today is your first day for the rest of your life.
Right. She works in
um
open heart surgery. She is very intricately does that. So you really do fix broken hearts.
yeah,
I love that. So does God.
so does God. Yes, he does.
I love that. I
Yes.
love that. And so, I think it is so important to talk about that, because when you said, there it was, at that moment, I saw Satan himself looking into my eyes. And he said, yeah, I'm going to fucking kill you if you bite me. And, and those are the times, Taylor, where I know that God is raising up an army to say, no more. We're done. We are done with you guys saying you have to be quiet. I wasn't there. Yes, he was there, but that choice, everybody wants choice. You want the choice to, do everything that you do. Well, so does everybody else. Right. And so he
Right.
can't, but we have the choice now to stand up and say something back. And I think it's so cool when you just said it's been 10 years. I had no idea. And you know what? I just pray and say, Father, where are we going today? Who are we going to find? And I found you. And I don't know you from anybody. For anybody that's listening,
Yeah.
I don't know her. I just found Taylor, and I reached out to her, and she said, absolutely. So I am here to say that God does care about our stories. He does want those stories told. He doesn't care if we use profanity in our books, because Christian people don't like profanity. Whatever. I mean, what I have to say to that is whatever. If that's all I say after what I've been through,
Yeah.
I'd say I'm pretty remarkable that I'm
Well,
not a drunk and,
and two, you also got to look at, is that all you got out of
can
what you
you
just read?
believe that? I
I know.
know, because
Is that
I
all
actually,
you got out of what you just read? Yeah.
I'm looking for brokenhearted people. I'm not looking for religious people. So I don't really care what they think, but it's always in the back of my hand, because you know what? Jesus isn't religious. And so religious people can do whatever they want with what they think, because it's none of my business. And God's not looking for them either, by the way.
Yeah.
So, um, was there, if I like to say, and then I'm going to give you some time to just talk, but I want to ask you, if there was anything in your life looking back, because you did tell, I couldn't tell. I mean, my parents started this when I was, 3. I had no recourse. I mean, I was a prisoner until the time I left and went to another abusive man. For you, what could have helped you? Obviously, if your mother would have listened, but I want to hear it in your words. What would have helped you tell sooner and faster? If
Well, like you said,
what could anything have happened?
a caring mother, someone who wasn't narcissistic. I was escape for her. I mean, and she told me for years, that I was her way out. She lived with an abusive father, not in a sexual way, but just physically abusive to her. a crazy mother. She, you know, made it abundantly clear that I was her way out. I was her ticket out. She never loved my biological father. He never wanted me. He was 10 years older than her, and he didn't want me. And so, had I maybe had at least one parent that was interested in my safety and well-being,
Right.
it might have gone differently. Um,
I was surprised to read, well, not surprised, because my mother would lay on the bed next to my father when I was older and watch him rape or sodomize me the same way so I wouldn't get pregnant. But your mother says to you later, you've had your time to tell. That's old news. When I read that in the book, I have to tell you, no, it breaks my heart for you, because no matter how many times I read that, how can a mother say, you had your one time to tell me and you're done? Taylor, I'm so sorry for that. And you're an adult when she tells you that. Oh, that's old news. Old news. If you want to tell it every day for the rest of your life, I am here to tell you that you have the right to do that, because living through those kinds of crimes, people don't have the right to tell us, oh, you know what? You have 1 year to heal and you're done. You get to tell me 2 times and you're done. Really? What do you have to say to that?
well, if you would allow me to read you a letter that she sent me this year.
Yes, please.
This was, I'm sorry, December 17th, 2022. That's my birthday. I am not sure what to say to you to make a difference in our lives. I am sorry for not having been a better mother to you, and I never intentionally did or thought of causing pain and misery. I have forgiven you for the actions that hurt me in recent years. I also thank you for the help you gave me in graduate school and for your sharing of your 2 marvelous daughters with me. My concern now is not for myself, but your daughters, who love both of us and they want family back for events and Christmas. I love you and miss being together, your mom.
Wow.
Okay,
So,
so let's just break that down just for a
right,
half second. Okay, first of all, it's on my birthday.
right.
The second is she follows up an apology. I'm sorry for not being a good mother. And oh, by the way, I've forgiven you for your transgressions or for
I heard that.
not being the good daughter. Okay. So, which in my mind, one positive and a negative, they cancel each other out, do they not?
Absolutely.
And then my concern now is not for myself.
Right.
Why do you need to say that?
Right.
If it's not
Because it is for herself. And
for
she
herself.
wants you back in the commingled dysfunction of the secretville. Don't tell
Exactly.
our stories. Don't make me look bad. What she's really saying is, could you please not make me look bad, Taylor? Instead of
Yeah.
saying, daughter, I am mortified that I allowed a man into our lives that did this to you. That's what her email should have been saying to you. And I apologize, because the only right words that a mother has to say, that the man that I married abused my daughters. And I cannot tell you, there are not enough words to tell them I'm sorry I didn't see. That is the only right answer a mother has. The only right answer. And I'm sorry for that.
You had to experience that.
It's just the reality of our lives, but I will forever do the best that I can to make that up to them. I
And
really
how are your
didn't.
relationships?
You know what? They're
How,
healed, because I'll tell you what, because that's all I consistently said for years until they could get through that, because there was a real burden between us, because I was supposed to protect them. And on my watch, I didn't. And you know what? I don't have any problem saying that. I was so broken, and, I was taking his abuse too, but that's not what they needed to hear. That is not what they needed to hear.
yeah.
What they needed to hear was, Mom, on your watch, he was raping us. That took so many years for us to talk about. I put my head in a bottle. I drank too much. And my counselor finally said, Jody, you have to find the strength to go to your kids and listen to their stories. And you know what, Taylor? I would have rather gone through my childhood again than to step into the world of abuse with them. It is the most devastating. The pain is deeper than anything I experienced with my parents, having to step in there. And you know what? I'm going to stay in that ring with them because they deserve it.
Yeah,
And it
they do.
still hurts. But you know what? For every mother out there, you cannot walk away from your children because their stories are hard. It's harder without you. It's harder without you.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'm so sorry that if it's any comfort, which it's not, but my husband dropped the ball, allowed a young man to come into my home. That, you know, boys were not allowed upstairs. They were not allowed down in the basement. My youngest daughter was raped.
It's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, it's very hard for me not to be homicidal. I mean, it
Right.
really is.
Right.
Because you and I both know what that darkness is. You and I both know
Exactly.
what
Exactly.
living like that is. And so, you know, to know that your child, the person that you love more than your own life, has gone through something like that. I mean, it was all I could do. And
It really is.
I still haven't
But
forgiven my husband. You
you
know,
know, I understand that, and I'll tell you that my counselor said this remarkable thing to me, and he said, "No, Jody, your children will not be you because you are not your mother." And you know what, Taylor, your children are going to be okay because you are not your mother, right?
exactly,
So in these
exactly.
last minutes, I could stay with you for another 2 hours, but I have another
Let's
interview
talk
coming up in
again
two.
later. Sue me.
I know, I love it, but I want to leave this time with you to just say anything that's important to your heart. Your advocacy work is admirable and I admire you. And I'm so thankful to have your time today. I just want to leave the last few minutes that we have for just for you to leave any message that you feel like we've forgotten, or I just want to open it up to you.
The one thing I'd like to say is to anybody out there that has experienced any type of abuse, the greatest thing I did was write it down. You don't have to write it to share. You don't have to write it to publish. You don't have to write it to um, bring back memories or whatever. But there's a saying in nursing that if you don't write it down, it wasn't done. And it's true. If you don't document, it's not done. And what writing my book did for me, it was the greatest gift. And again, I'm not healed, but I'm at peace and I have acceptance. And the one thing that helped me do that was that I wrote it down and then I read it over and over and over. And even though the people that were the most important to me didn't believe, I wrote it down and it happened. And once
And
you read it and
huge.
once you digest it and once you, I mean, it proves how strong you are, that you survived, that you were a victim, you were a survivor, but now you're a warrior. And if there's one thing I can tell you, don't settle for being a survivor. To me, that is a dirty word. Don't be a survivor, be a warrior. A warrior goes out and conquers life, grabs life by the balls and hangs on. And that's what you need to do. Everybody's story is different. Everybody, how they handle it is different. I'm not a counselor. I don't, all I know is by the grace of God, I got through my trauma. All I can say is tell somebody you trust, tell somebody that you love, tell somebody that will listen, and seek out help. Seek help for the nightmares, the OCD, the counting, the repetitive behavior, the, you know, because something's wrong. You're trying to settle and bring peace. And the more you delve into this, the more you look at it from outside. You're safe now. It's over. It's done. you're safe. The more you look at it, the more light you put on it, the darkness will go away. I promise. It has for me. And that's it.
That's so beautiful. What she's saying is the biggest thing about secrets is they want to come out. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.